So, here it is, y'all. Here it is. It hits heavy because anybody who's known my channel, anybody who's watched my channel, anybody who's like seen my channel from the very beginning. I mean, even at the very beginning, if you look on YouTube right now and you go back to like the furthest history of my channel, you're gonna see it. You're gonna see a Let's Play of Dragon Ball Z Legacy of Goku 1. And that's because I really wanted to sink my teeth into something that really brought a level of weight to my life. I posted it on Twitter. You can see it. My entire Dragon Ball collection, a shelf dedicated to all the manga from Dragon Ball and all the episodes of Dragon Ball Z, whether they be the orange bricks or not, is irrelevant. I was in college and I needed something that was able to be afforded. And honestly, even with the aspect ratio issue, it was never a big deal to be it was still the Dragon Ball that I grew up with when I was able to play the Bruce Faulkner soundtrack to the broadcast. Basically the way it aired on Toonami. I enjoyed myself wholeheartedly to watch each and every one of those episodes of Dragon Ball Z over and over and over. Whether it be watching those, watching each and every movie that I watched along the way, whether watching Battle of Gods, watching Evolution. I've said to this day, Battle of Gods is one of my favorite Dragon Ball Z movies to date. Debatably one of my favorite movies, just because it did a great job of capturing the heart and soul of Toriyama and how he utilized each of these characters. And I understand that Toriyama doesn't treat these characters equally all the time, but I feel in this movie he was able to use them at least to their strengths. Some of the fighters were fighting. Yeah, they didn't do as much effort as I wish they would, but they still fought, and they still fought that good fight. Yamcha was able to play a comedic joke. Oolong had a nice little 4 to 5 minute segment to himself. Goku was missing from the cast, but when he came back after he came from King Kai's planet in order to fight off against Beerus, everybody loved seeing him show up at last minute. That was traditional Dragon Ball style, because I know I made comments on how Goku shows up all over the place in GT and Super, but I really loved and captured that moment in Battle of Gods when Goku shows up and is ready to fight Lord Beerus and Super Saiyan God, and everybody's so relieved to see him show up, and Goku giving him such a great fight. And then that moment, that very moment, even, and I'll admit this, around this time, Evolution had already passed. I was watching other Dragon Ball movies. There were things I weren't necessarily agreeing with in terms of how Dragon Ball was going. There were like things like Episode of Bardock that I didn't like, and all other things that were making me rather upset. I still kept it going because I wanted to provide you all, the fans, the passion that I have for Dragon Ball. But I would say my favorite moment, and the moment that sparked my love and joy back into Dragon Ball Z, is literally when Goku goes, and excuse me for this. It's because I'm gonna do it, but it's probably gonna hurt because like I said, my temperature went down really low. It's when Goku goes, "I will not let you destroy my world." And then when he fought Beerus and the music came on so hard, that awoke everything. That awoke my entire love for Dragon Ball. That sparked an ultimate level of joy in me that made me go, I love Dragon Ball. If I had any doubts, if I had any regrets, whether it's good or bad, Dragon Ball solidified itself as my number one favorite anime series. And again, I'll understand completely, because I hear people say this all the time, obviously before these events. Dragon Ball was not perfect. It definitely wasn't perfect. It had holes as wide as the canyon sides. I completely understand that. But it's that mystical world. It's that level of imagination, that level of nuance, that level of whimsy, of depth, that allowed me to keep coming back every time. That allowed me to return back to the series each and every time. There was no doubt in my mind that this was a series that, through the good and the bad, still held a very strong hold on me. And it's funny, the way I got into Dragon Ball was a very interesting time for me. So I've said it before, but I'll say it again because I've said it in movie reviews. The way I got into Dragon Ball was that I was a very heavy Pokemon fan, and I was also getting into Yu-Gi-Oh! But my stepdad, my mom had married someone else. Like, well, not married someone else. She was never with my biological father. My biological father, I'll get to him in a second. But my mom married a guy, and I was like confused because I was in a world where I stopped and believe everybody has their mom and their dad. So who is this other person that's come into my life? And thankfully and gratefully, he was such a great person. He started showing me these videos, these VHS tapes. So yeah, I'm sorry. I'm old. I'm a 400-year-old lich. I'm sorry. But he started showing me these VHS tapes. And the first VHS tape he showed me was Dragon Ball Z, and Goku was fighting off against Frieza, and he was at Super Saiyan. I didn't know what Super Saiyan was. All I saw was this super muscular blonde dude fighting this like weird white and purple alien dude who was also super buff. And I could see that they were fighting, and like lightning was striking, and he kept saying the planet was gonna blow up. And I'm like, whoa, this is intense. Things that I never thought I would ever see. And I was still calling it cartoons at the time. I didn't know what anime was. I said, what is this cartoon? People are bleeding. I saw like blood coming down Goku's body, and Goku punched Frieza, and then like Frieza launched this like disc and cut Frieza and cut his whole body in half. And I'm like, whoa, I've never in my life seen anything like this. This was intense. You got to understand, for for an 8-year-old, this was a lot. For an 8 to 9-year-old, this was definitely a lot to take in. And I'm like, what is this? What? So I asked my stepdad, I'm like, what in the world is this? And he told me, like, oh, that's Goku. He fights in order to save the universe. And again, you can interpret it how many ways you want. Dragon Ball was a different show brought to America because Dragon Ball was still young in the world of anime. It was still fresh. It was still a new step into the now created world that we have of anime. So you called it a cartoon, and when you saw a good guy fight a bad guy, it was a superhero fighting a supervillain. We didn't care about translations back then. We didn't care about dubbing and subbing. We didn't care about any of that. All we saw was intense action, fast-paced animation, and brawling, and like things that were rapid paced and super like vibrant and colorful and intense. And it was a simpler time. And when you start to learn that, oh, Goku is this guy named a Saiyan, and he can transform into a Super Saiyan. So I got to see what Goku's hair looks like normally. It's black. So I went back to go watch some of the old VHS tapes that he had. He goes, these are the episodes that happened before the one you watched. I'm like, wait a minute, so can Goku not turn Super Saiyan anymore? He goes, no, Goku learned how to do that just then. He was able to gain that transformation later on. And then after that, I was like, oh, so you gotta gain it. And I looked at Vegeta, and I'm like, oh, can Vegeta do it? His hair is black and stuff like that. And then I started seeing these like trailers on like Toonami and other VHS tapes where you could see Vegeta's hair was yellow. And I'm like, oh, he does it too. Can Gohan do it? Like, I got so invested into all these characters, and like it or hate it, whether it was completely Americanized or not, Dragon Ball Z did a phenomenal job of being marketed in the West. Whether you think that it's Americanized and cheesy or corny or not, Dragon Ball made a solidified impact to the point where it got everybody into anime. Whether you knew what anime was or not, whether you knew what Japanese cartoons were or not, you invested. You knew. You were the one that went into these things. Hell, even people who don't like Dragon Ball Z knew of it. It was like Pokemon, where it just stamped its way into the hearts and souls of millions of people everywhere. like parents alone, moms and grandpas and grandmas and aunties were like, what is this fiery hair craziness that you keep watching on TV? It was Dragon Ball. Even the animes that weren't all about fighting, I very much started to grow up at this time and go into other genres of anime that weren't just shonen. And when I got introduced to those other series, I still loved Dragon Ball, and I was able to like become multicultured. And what I liked Death Note. I like, even to the day, I like Dr. Stone. I like several isekai animes. I like slice of life animes. I love love romance animes. I like all these things. And no matter if they all fall within the same genre, whether they all fall within that solidified level of understanding, it was Dragon Ball who brought me there. Like, no matter which way you want to point it out, whether it be tragedies, whether it be epics, whether it be like these epic, whether these fun episodic tales, or even Nichijou for its comic relief and episodic as it was, Inuyasha for its like partly romance like features combined with the action. We all, no matter what, have Dragon Ball to thank. Yu Yu Hakusho, the guy who made Hunter x Hunter, borrowed extremely heavy from Dragon Ball Z. I'll never forget that. And Yu Yu Hakusho was another gateway into the anime world. And then we moved forward. As I grew up, again, I started watching. My stepdad was able to keep going, and he bought all these like DVDs. He bought these like, not DVDs, I'm sorry. He bought these VHS tapes, and then later he bought these DVDs because we were starting to move from the VHSs to the DVDs, and we can see that we were slowly moving to that era. And when he did, like, I was starting to learn more about Dragon Ball. I was starting to gain the lore, the knowledge. I was able to buy, I don't know if you guys remember these, but these comic book or these magazines called Beckett. Beckett was this like extremely cheesy but very much on brand level of advertisement that showed off all the Japanese imported action figures from Dragon Ball Z that we haven't even seen yet in America. I got to see like Goku, but his hair was yellow just like Super Saiyan. But I was like, why is his hair so long? That's not Super Saiyan Goku. What is that? I learned about Super Saiyan 3. I was like, oh, he gains different levels of Super Saiyan throughout the year, and that's one of his levels of Super Saiyan. So I started to learn about Super Saiyan 1, 2, and 3. Even before that, Goku had blown everybody's minds during Toonami and in the VHS releases of Dragon Ball, where Goku stated, it's time for me to reach a level beyond Super Saiyan. That blew everybody's mind. Nobody could think that that was possible. And again, Toriyama made a transformation that has to this day been parodied by so many other series, both anime and non-anime. It's been referenced in songs and books and culture. It's been talked about throughout other people who don't even know what these things are. And to see it all come together like this and be like, I remember this. I know this. I am aware of this world, and I'm glad that I'm in it. Even seeing things like the cartoons, or not the cartoons, I'm sorry, the commercials. Dragon Ball Z, whether you like it or not, Toonami and Dragon Ball were a match made in heaven, and honestly, you gotta thank Dragon Ball for even keeping Toonami afloat. I feel like Dragon Ball is 80 to 90% possible, responsible even, for keeping Toonami as high as it was, because Dragon Ball was advertised so many different times. You would hear that the down to boom, Dragon Ball Z is coming next, and then and then like Vegeta and 18 are fighting, or Goku would do this cool flip and go Kaioken, or like Gohan would run up and do like these cool kicks on Frieza, or Vegeta would be like, I am the Prince of all Saiyans once again. Like all of this stuff, this level of weight, this level of culture, this level of strength between Toonami's Midnight Run and Toonami's Rising Sun. Toonami was all over on Saturday and Sundays and brought us Dragon Ball, as well as many others like Tenchu and Rurouni Kenshin and Case Close and Sailor Moon, all these other animes. But Dragon Ball was the leading forefront to all of this, and you just can't help but respect that. Whether you liked it, whether you hated it, whether you thought it was cheesy, whether you thought it was over the top, whether you thought the dub was Americanized and corny, you still have Toriyama to thank for this. And yeah, they made some changes. And it's always sad to see when a series makes some liberties of its own. But I will say this is the one series that I think when it made liberties of its own, even those changes created solidified moments that carried over, and Toriyama even looked at and respected these changes. And it wasn't just Toriyama alone. Toei Animation for bringing us specials like Bardock and the Father of Goku or the History of Trunks, which whether you want to say it's canon or it's not canon, Toriyama gave the thumbs up. It's still his franchise, and he gave the thumbs up for these things. It doesn't matter if it's canon, if it's not canon. These were bits and pieces of more content. We weren't in a world back then where we were complaining about, oh, this is filler. Oh my God, it's so much filler. Yeah, there were very like early weeaboo Japanese heavy purist fans that were into that stuff. But we never complained, or at least between us growing up with those pieces of media, we never complained about the growing scale of content. And again, whether you want to accept it or not, he greenlit these things. Again, whether you believe that these things are canon or not, he greenlit them. GT, love it or hate it, he greenlit that. The movies are so good. Remember Cooler and Meta Cooler? Exactly. Like, these were moments. And whether you watched them dubbed with all the rock music and all the cheesy lines, or whether you watched them subbed with their pure raw form, you still dedicated yourself to these things. You still watched these things from front to end. You still looked at all these things. And even if you didn't, you knew of them. So moving forward into the timeline, you're probably thinking, you brought up your stepdad. Well, what about your dad? I want to say that this is the moment I knew that I would fall in love with this series, because it made a very positive impact on my life when it came to my personal life. So you guys know that I brought up my stepdad. Well, when I brought up my stepdad, I started to talk about like Dragon Ball a lot. I started to talk about video games. I started to talk about things that were being brought up. And my dad heard me and went, wait a minute. My biological dad this time, not my stepdad. Because the way it worked is that I would go to my mom's house on like weekends and holidays and stuff. But for school, I would go to my dad's house on the weekend and stuff. And when that happened, my dad was like, wait a minute, did you just say Dragon Ball? And I'm like, yeah. My stepdad introduced me to Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, or at least Dragon Ball Z. And he goes, I know what Dragon Ball Z is. And it blew my mind. I was like, what? You know about it too? It's really a very shocking moment to realize that as a kid, one person who introduced you to something can connect and have that level of connection and same ideology when it comes to a topic that's brought up. Even back then, I knew, oh my God, this is a series that's well known throughout a lot of people. And it made me a lot more comfortable to know that my stepdad and my dad were both very great men. They both took a lot of care of me. They were both great people. And they both had that same love for Dragon Ball. So naturally, for me, it oozed into my life perfectly. So while my dad didn't buy me the episodes, he did buy me a couple of DVD versions of the movies. He's like, here, I have a couple of DVD versions of the movie that I own because I collected these movies time and time again. So I got to watch some of those Dragon Ball Z movies with him. And then what made it further, and you guys, like, this may be a video game product, but you still have Toriyama to thank. He bought Dragon Ball Z Budokai 1. My introduction to the Budokai series was thanks to him. He bought it, and we would play it together. He would play it, and then he would let me play it afterwards, and we would play like the story mode together, and we would fight against each other, and it was how we created our moments together. It was how we became people. It was how I started to grow a bond with my biological dad, and then I would even bring those games over to my stepdad and my mom's house and put them on his PlayStation 2 so that I can play Dragon Ball Z Budokai on there. And then for Christmas, I'll never forget it, I got introduced to my stepdad's son. Now, he is from a completely different family, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. It's Coco for life. He's my brother. Like, that's my stepbrother. Yes, stepbrother. But I don't use step when I refer to him. The only steps that exist are the steps that lead up to my apartment, as far as I'm concerned. To him, he was my brother. And he still is my brother. And what brought us together was watching Dragon Ball movies, was watching Dragon Ball Z movies together. And then even when the video games came, I'll never forget this. It was the greatest Christmas of my life. During Christmas, my mom and my stepdad woke us up during Christmas morning to open presents. And what we got was a PlayStation 2. This time we had one for his house and my mom's house. We had a PlayStation 2, and then we also got Dragon Ball Z Budokai 2 and ATV Off-Road Fury 2. ATV Off-Road Fury 2 was a game that came with the PlayStation 2. It was a launch title. But we were able to have these, and in addition to that, my stepdad even went above and beyond and bought us this Dragon Ball Z Budokai 2 play guide. It was this super thick magazine that had all the characters, all their super moves, and all their strategies and tips, and all the items and capsules that exist and how to get them and how to unlock them. It was the ultimate Dragon Ball Z Budokai 2 guide, and I loved it. And then when I went over to my dad's house, I'm thinking, okay, I'm only going to be able to play Budokai 2 when I'm at my stepdad's house. Well, lo and behold, my dad wound up buying the Budokai 2 game as well. So I was able to play Budokai 2 at both households. Granted, I was able to do all my homework and math work and stuff. But still, I had so much exposure to these games that I played them in and out. And I tried to unlock all the fun little like tips and tricks and nuances and clues and hidden characters and everything. And I had a lot of fun playing these games and then coming back to my stepbrother and being like, look what I found out when I played this at my dad's house. And they're like, boom, look, these characters confuse. Or this Majin Buu can absorb this character to make like Buu Vegeta. Or, oh, if Buu absorbs Tien and Yamcha, he becomes like Buu Tianhan or something. Like these exclusive solidified moments I'll never forget. That Christmas morning was absolutely amazing to me, just to see my what became my favorite moment, and it was all solidified with Dragon Ball. And also, in addition, that Budokai 2 magazine also came with a copy of Dragon Ball GT and a Yu Yu Hakusho episode. It was like both episodes, and the GT episode was the one where all the characters had escaped from HFIL, and Goku had to get his way to fight Frieza and Cell. Whereas the Yu Yu Hakusho episode was the episode where Yusuke was fighting off against 80% Togoro. And I loved it. Just seeing not only Dragon Ball Z, but Yu Yu Hakusho in the mix. It was such a jewel, a golden moment in my life. Z had ended, I believe, at this time, and GT was starting to become that thing we were watching on VHS tapes. And because VHS tapes were imported, but they were still dubbed, my stepdad was able to like bring those in every time, all the way up until Dragon Ball GT ended. And they were able to give us the DVD Heroes Legacy, which I got to see Goku Jr. traverse the world with Puck and search for the 4-star Dragon Ball. These moments are still burned into my memory extremely hard. So you're probably thinking, is that all the moments in created? Absolutely not. One day, and this brought me, as a kid, this almost brought me to tears just because of how happy I was. I'm going to discuss all three of my birthdays, actually. The first birthday, one of the birthdays I had, I believe I was 11 or 12, one of the two, 12 or 13. And it felt like nobody had celebrated my birthday at all. And I was kind of, as a kid, you get kind of bummed out by that. It felt like nobody said or did anything for your birthday. And as a kid, that's heartbreaking. So then my dad's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, it felt like nobody celebrated my birthday. And he goes, no, we did. And then he shows me this like gift. And I open it up. And lo and behold, it's Dragon Ball Z Legacy of Goku 1, complete with like a poster and everything. And it brought me almost to tears. I was so happy just to see that. And then the birthday, I want to say the birthday or two afterwards, I told my dad this time around, I'm like, You know that game that you got me for my birthday? Well, they made a second game to it, and it was Legacy of Goku 2, and to this day, I'll solidify this. To this day, Legacy of Goku 2, when he got that for me for my birthday, was the most fun I ever had in a Dragon Ball Z Game Boy Advance game. And then we moved forward. I didn't quite get the chance to play Boo's Fury right off the bat. In fact, I didn't get Boo's Fury until much later, and even then, I didn't buy it. I rented it. Unfortunately, I didn't get the chance to. But there was also a funny memory that comes into it where Christmas had rolled around, and my stepdad and my dad both got me and my stepbrother. Well, he got me, and then my stepdad brought me and my brother a gift. And what it was Dragon Ball Z Legendary Super Warriors for the Game Boy Color. Now, granted, the Game Boy Advance existed at this point, but I think this game came so late that it was sort of in the Game Boy Advance era. So I was playing this game, and then my dad's like, I got you a gift. And then I opened it up, and it's Legendary Super Warriors, and I went, dang it, I have this game already. But it was still fun to have 2 copies of the game to see like what differences I could do in each of them and cherish them and play them. And I played them front to back and beat them. And I don't know if you guys remember, I'm still doing my Legendary Super Saiyan stream. That'll be coming back at some point. But I remember that I figured out on the internet how to unlock all these characters. And this was back when the internet was very young. And it was dial-up internet, and you had to like print out these sheets in order to look up all these characters, like different types of like ways to unlock them. And then there came the one big birthday. Oh no, this wasn't even I think this was a birthday. Yeah, it was a birthday because it came out on my birthday. I came home, and my dad was like, hey, you didn't look at your nightstand in your room. And I said, oh, I didn't. I was in my room a couple of minutes ago. I didn't see anything different. He goes, no, go look at your nightstand. And I went in the room. I looked at the nightstand, and I think I screamed the loudest that I ever screamed, just with a huge like belted yeah, because it was Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3. And when I tell you this was the greatest moment of my life, I played that game pretty much till the buttons fell off. I love Budokai 3. And it's solidified to this day as like a hallmark, a very stapled line of thought within my Dragon Ball history. And I loved it. I loved it. And speaking of other holidays, and also speaking of Toriyama, his designs, again, spawned way past Dragon Ball. I remember my stepbrother had got the Blue Dragon game. And when he played the Blue Dragon game, we loved it. We had a great time going through it. Unfortunately, I believe around this end, we stopped seeing each other as much. But I believe because of school and stuff, and the fact that we were separated. So every time, though, he would get inch further and further into Blue Dragon, and I would see him playing Blue Dragon a lot. And then I even started my own file on Blue Dragon, and I was just like, wow, this is amazing. And then I even went in this one Christmas, and I'll never forget it. Toriyama, again, making a huge impact on me. I don't know what exactly attracted me to this, but my mom said that because we were moving to a new house, and unfortunately we weren't doing that good financially, we weren't getting a Christmas gift that year. And that saddened me. Thankfully, I still had some money saved up, so I decided to buy myself a Christmas gift. I was like, I'll buy myself a Christmas gift. Why not? And then I'll open it up under the tree when I wake up. And when I did that, I opened it up, or at least I went in, and I was at this store was called Game Crazy at the time. We had GameStop, but Game Crazy was the other video game store. And I looked around for which game I wanted to buy as my Christmas gift. And I looked, and I was like, what's this? And I saw Dragon Quest 8. I never played, I didn't even know this was a numerical thing. I just saw Dragon Quest 8. And I didn't know this at first, and I was like, this looks so familiar. Why does this look familiar to me? Well, obviously, woe and behold, Akira Toriyama was the one behind the artwork for Dragon Quest, all the Dragon Quest games. So I bought it, and then I put it under my own tree, and I started playing it after I woke up the next morning. And I immediately fell in love. It was a turn-based RPG, and I was starting to understand turn-based RPGs a lot because I had played a lot of Pokemon. And I was just like, this game is so amazing. And to this day, Dragon Quest 8 is one of my favorite RPGs. Like it is the out of all the Dragon Quest games, it is my absolute favorite of the Dragon Quest games. And then I ended up playing other games, and I didn't buy a copy of this, but I do remember playing it for SNES emulators when I started growing up and learning what emulators are. I started playing Chrono Trigger because everybody was like, oh, you can do Super Nintendo emulators and you can do PlayStation emulators. And I was starting to learn how to do these things. And I had a laptop, but it was a very like at the time, it was an up-to-date laptop that can play these things. And I started playing it, and I started playing Chrono Trigger, and I'm like, I love this thing. I love this. It's, again, Toriyama. And it was such a great game to play. It was such a great moment. It was such a great memory that I had. And then to see, like, years later, Terrell play Chrono Trigger, and I wanted to show up for each and every one of his streams. Sadly, I couldn't because of our schedules, but I love the fact that whenever I showed up, I got to watch him play literally one of my most favorite RPGs along with Dragon Quest. Even now, I say it, Persona 5 is one of my favorite, but Chrono Trigger and Dragon Quest as well as Pokemon Crystal are definitely like super hard titles in my heart that to this day have not moved from the spot of being my like juggernaut of favorite RPG games. And I got Toriyama to thank. And if you already know, they said it before, Pokemon with Ken Sugimori, Oda with One Piece, Masashi Kishimoto with Naruto, Suzuki Takahashi, all of them with Yu-Gi-Oh! They all drew heavy inspiration from the whimsy and the spiky hair and the vibrant, colorful characters that Dragon Ball Z presents. I mean, even Toriko and Naruto and even Luffy for a while all had the orange and was rocking the orange and blue that Goku was rocking. Toriyama gave birth to this character. You love him or hate him, he is the icon of Japan. When you're able to make a character using nothing but like a pen and a piece of paper that shapes the way to create a character that would be the representation for the Japanese Olympics, that would be held in Mexico as one of the most iconic fictional characters on the planet, to win constant first place awards as being the best fictional character. I can only imagine the level of joy and passion and heart and soul and pride that he must have felt for having an accomplished job. Again, they weren't always the best. He had some hiccups, like everybody does. They're humans. But even through his human-like mistakes, he still decided to put in that work, that passion, that strength, that drive that other people like would have given up a long time ago. And he did for a while. And you could even tell that he was stressed out and he wanted to check out of a very juggernaut, overwhelming series that, I'm going to be honest, I don't think he realized would make this strong of an impact. But he pursued forward and didn't want the name of Dragon Ball to be tarnished. And for that, you can't help but love and respect the man's drive. I don't care what I've said in the past about how much I approve or disapprove, like things like Dragon Ball Minus or Toriyama's take on History of Trunks. Yeah, I don't like those versions of those things. Yeah, I don't like those like sudden changes. I've said it before. Resurrection F is a movie that slowly declined, but he went through the effort to make them. He put 1,000 times more effort than any other artist would have done at that if given his situation. And for that, you can't help but admire, respect, and applaud him. And honestly, I hope that even within my years, I'm 31 turning 32, and I think about this a lot. I'm at a point in my life where I've really stopped and think, I made this content creation stuff because I want to make an impact on people's lives just like he did, or have me be talked about, or have me be beloved like this man and several other content creators and several other creators that have made it this far in life. And you gotta admit that he is the driving force that has pushed me, as well as millions upon millions upon millions of other people. Even at my job, I heard people saying, rest in peace, Toriyama. And these were people that I didn't realize even knew what Dragon Ball was. People that didn't even have a personal connection with Dragon Ball recognized that this man had passed and can't help but love and respect the amount of effort that he put in. Can't help but admire the world, the universe that he brought upon and the potential that he brought upon to us. Seeing him reach out personally to Toyotaro. And again, I don't know which direction Toyotaro plans to take the series, but to have a tribute to Toriyama, starting off from him drawing that Super Saiyan 5 fan art to now where he's openly been a successor to a juggernaut of a franchise, you can't help but love that. And to see that Dragon Ball Daima as his final project seems rather fitting because Goku is a child again, which is something that most people don't like. But it's very clear that he put his charm, heart, and soul into the spirit of bringing us back full circle to where Goku was, which was a vibrant young child that loved adventure and wanted to explore this world and fight and test himself against powerful, strong, good and evil opponents. It's a very basic concept that some may like, some may think that it's too bland, some may think that it's too simplistic, but it was a concept that had layers and layers of dissection and depth from all over, from power scalers to admirers to analysts to lore breakdowns to geekdom, Blackened Fist to Quaman to Dato Doya, Rhyme Style, Devil Artemis, like Team 4-Star themselves, literally giving us the most iconic abridged series that brought so many other abridgers together. It's all because of the works of Toriyama, the pen that started and ended it all. And to make my childhood, whether it be mostly with video games or movies or the show itself, the raw content that he gave us, I've openly stated that there's things I like and dislike about it, but that's why I stuck with Dragon Ball, was because it gave me the ability to be critical. It gave me the ability to express myself. It gave the ability for me to look into these things. It gave me the ability to create headcanon and lore and inspiration and story and analytics that for some takes were loved, for others wasn't, but it was my takes alone. It was my opinion that was able to be pushed out there. It was my viewpoints that were able to be heard by others. And some agreed with me, some disagreed with me. But so long as I got it out there, to me, that was the most important thing. It made an impact. It kept me going. It kept me fighting. It kept me driving. I lost my collective shit during Dragon Ball Super towards the butt end because there was so many things that I just didn't like about the Tournament of Power. But I fought through to the end. And I think that drive that I had to fight through to the end was definitely probably the will of Toriyama to keep giving us content. Whether I liked it or disliked it is irrelevant. The fact that I was able to see it through to the end makes me very much praise and respect the man who also went ahead and saw it through to the end. The man who was disappointed by evolution, so he decided to make one of my favorite Dragon Ball Z movies. The man who decided to continue forward and make legendary Super Saiyan Broly. While I clearly like Toei's Broly more than Toriyama's Broly, I still watched the movie. He still had a hold on me. I still found a lot of fluid animations and art styles and fun things that I did like about it. I was able to push through and be witness to Dragon Ball Superhero and the levels of agreement and disagreement that I had on that. The comic relief that Toriyama decided to bring, even in this day and age where people didn't necessarily agree with everything Toriyama put down as comic relief. I know controversies about like Upa and Upa's father being Native American and like General Black and also Mr. Popo. These things caught very heavy-handed criticisms that obviously if you looked into a lot more and understood his perspective, Toriyama never had any intention to openly offend anybody. I think he just went off what exposure that he had at the time. And nowadays, we have people fighting this to this day and giving Toriyama his props and defending him for his creativity, because we knew at the end it was an eye-opener. He didn't mean, like, harm. He didn't mean to offend. He didn't mean to openly attack people. I mean, if you even look at Goku's interactions with Upa for more than a second, Goku, Upa, and Upa's father, Goku went out of his way to use the Dragon Balls out of an act of kindness to bring Upa's father back to life, because Upa had lost his father at a young age. That's a very heavy, heartfelt story, especially when you consider the fact that Goku's original mission was to look for just the 4-star ball because he wanted his grandfather's treasure back. But the fact that Goku decided to be selfless and use the 4-star ball as well as the other balls for a completely different viewpoint, for a completely different mission, for a completely different objective, and that's to bring happiness to others. It's like poetry in heaven when at the end of that arc, Goku winds up meeting his grandpa, if only for a day. And it really brought up that heart-touching moment that lets you know that, yeah, characters can be brought back to life, so it mitigates death. Yeah, Toriyama's done some things that have made some very obvious plot holes and even cut corners. I mean, Super Saiyan in and of itself was made blonde because on the manga, it can be white. And if it's in the manga and it's white, he doesn't have to ink out Goku's hair anymore. Tons upon tons of cut corners. Lore-wise, Super Saiyan 3 takes up so much energy. But in reality, Toriyama stated that he wanted, or even you can see it, Toriyama didn't want to make Super Saiyan 3 over and over because he had to draw the hair so many times. He didn't want to bring Cell back because he didn't want to draw those little, like, spackles on Cell's body. But that was also understandable considering how old Toriyama was getting and how much he was providing already. And it brought characters like Miriam from Hunter x Hunter to life, and it brought several other characters that spawned from this idea of, look at the inspiration that these characters brought on to someone else. And it's very admirable and very commendable to see that this man went out of his way to create such iconic characters, to create such iconic moments. Even if you break down specifically the manga moments and not the anime moments, I mean, I don't know how to tell you. Like, Goku saying, "You fool," and blasting Frieza just before the planet Namek explodes, or Gohan using the father-son Kamehameha and launching it with Goku right behind him. Goku telling Majin Buu goodbye and hope he comes back as a better person. Like Goku holding Piccolo, like holding Raditz down, and Piccolo shooting them with the special beam cannon. Vegeta and Goku, God, the beam struggle that they had. These are all Toriyama moments that he brought to the page. Nobody else. The anime, all it could do was animate it and bring epic music and dialogue to it that we can verbally hear, but he brought those moments to life. He awoke those moments. I'll still never forget when, like, Gohan knocks Cell Jr.'s face off, like head off, and in the anime it just turns into a puff of smoke. But in the manga, you can see like Cell Jr.'s brains and bits and guts and everything fly apart, just to show how gruesome and brutal injuries could get back in Dragon Ball. It was something that definitely shook the levels of disbelief within the series. These were more than powerful moments. But I wanna go ahead and end this by like reading you guys' comments, just because I want you guys to say your pieces and hear them for all it's worth, so that you guys get that closure too within this chat. So let's see. Toriyama, not only Dragon Ball, but Chrono Trigger series and Blue Dragon, as well as several others. He did smaller projects like Sandland and things like that, and Aurelie. Don't even get me started on Aurelie. That wound up being like a crossover, so much to the point where Aurelie wound up becoming a character in the Dragon Ball Budokai Tenkaichi 3, and I believe Tenkaichi 2 actually, to where she made a cameo in that. Like, Toriyama's works were so imprinted into that layer of reality. Wow, Battle of Gods, best a cooler movie for you now. He inspired Oda to start One Piece. Oda was an inspiration to any forms of media. The legend and staple of the animation from Japanese Navy. Not the Navy! A Dragon Ball original was my first exposure to the series in early 2000, and Dragon Ball Marathon the Kid Goku, Evil King Piccolo stuff. I didn't even get to mention that. I got into Dragon Ball Z. I didn't even get into Dragon Ball until much, much later when I saw Toonami and they're like, take it back to the beginning of when Goku was still a kid. And I was like, whoa, hold up. So Goku had a series when he was a kid. And when I saw that, I was mind blown to see like these martial arts characters from their very like beginning, and to see more characters get spotlight like Tien and Yamcha and Bulma and others get the spotlight here because they didn't get it as much in Z. Even going back, my stepdad had bought us both volumes 1 and 2 of the Viz Media version of the Dragon Ball original manga. He went ahead and let me have it, and then so I went ahead and just bought the other Viz Media mangas, and then I was able to complete all 4. I think it was either 4 or 5, but I was able to complete the entire Viz Media collection and have all of them. And to this day, I cherish that. To this day, the fact that I have so many, the fact that I have all of them in one go, and it makes me so happy that Dragon Ball, even at its very beginning, was to entertain me in the same level that Z did. The stakes were a lot lower and the things were a lot more comedic. But to see Dragon Ball the way it was, even in a much simpler, more comedic format, was definitely like a breath of fresh air and a vibrant eye-opener that I'm so happy about. When Goku first turned Super Saiyan, I initially thought that he was shaving his lifespan to achieve the form, using Krillin's death as motivation. Nice. A groundwork of animation. Remember when Trunks sliced Frieza in half? Oh yeah, I'll never forget that. After I watched the VHS tape, so during the VHS tape, there was this like, VHS tapes had trailers towards the beginning. And when I watched the end of this one, this was the first time I saw a trailer at the end of a Dragon Ball Z episode. And when I saw that, my TV was flashing. It was like Trunks. And then you hear like this dum 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 dum. And then you saw this kid with purple hair like turn his hair golden. I'm like, wait a minute, there's another Super Saiyan? And then you would see like the trailer would end and you would see all these slices and you would hear Trunks like go shwoo. And it was so cool just to see Trunks slice through. And I was like, who is this person? This is epic as hell. And wait a minute, Frieza's coming back? Like, this was the first time Frieza was brought back. So, like, they didn't wear out their welcome of, like, villains coming back yet. So it was so cool to see it happen for the first time. My brother showed me the saga 11 years ago, and I'm catching up with Kai. Dragon Ball Z was the gateway to anime, Inuyasha. I don't know what NF is. Yu Yu Hakusho and Naruto. So many series opened up. Beckett, I have seen this. In fact, I found mine while cleaning my house. Nice. Toonami, where its birth and the Midnight Run. The Dragon Ball Z narrators, the goated music, and the high amounts of commercials that promoted it were peak. The movies were so good. Remember Cooler and Metacooler? Decades later, the revitalization of Dragon Ball Z gave Kai an hour on Saturday with Cartoon Network block, and before they dropped the Saturday and anime show. It's a strong foundation for people. Dragon Ball is fun for folks of all ages. Wow, Dragon Ball is a journey. I love Boo's Fury, Toriyama. Toriyama is like the modern Osamu Tezuka, and he's the face of anime to so many people. The ever-reaching, inspired many. Nessa said he touched so many people. Michael said since the late 80s. I feel like the 90% of the later stuff was Toei/Shueisha being greedy. They overworked their talents and disregarded their health. Zachary said it was fair to say that Toriyama is a Stan Lee of anime. Hell, I would even argue Stan Lee gained inspiration from Dragon Ball Z. It also gave us the content to foster community. Sirius, even if he's not with us, but his work is eternal. Absolutely. Battle with Gods is a gem. What would you say is your favorite Dragon Ball Z moment? Mine is Majin Vegeta versus Final Sacrifice against Majin Buu. Toriyama was such a humble guy that he never had a big ego, or he helped out so many young mangaka. Nessa said crazy enough that what I used to remember as a kid, I usually remember them as a kid. But I didn't have access to Dragon Ball Z due to lack of cable. Back when villains could return regularly and not felt overstayed. As far as my favorite moment, I mean, take your pick. I guess if I had to pick, I would literally say when Gohan was beam struggling with Cell. And I know this isn't Toriyama exclusive, but I still love this moment in Dragon Ball Z where Yamcha, Tien, Krillin, Piccolo, all of them are like they're all blasting Cell in the back. Keep trying, and then Cell pushes it back. And then Vegeta finally comes in and launches his blast. And it's the combined efforts of everybody where Gohan's able to push all the way through and blast Cell away. To this day, like, I know that's not just a Toriyama moment. Toriyama just made it so Vegeta is the only one to sneak attack Cell. But I'm sorry, like, it was one of those moments where I feel like Toriyama and Toei worked together to make a match made in heaven. Because everything about Dragon Ball Z just solidified there. There was a villain made of the cells of everybody they've ever fought before. Goku's helping Gohan get his motivation up spiritually. All the other characters are telling speeches about how Gohan and Goku inspired them. Vegeta finally breaks and changes a heart in order to make a difference for everybody. Everybody comes together. This is the Dragon Ball Z experience, the moment, the level in which everything comes full circle and together. And honestly, I to this day can't think of a moment that can replace that. I'm truly grateful that I got to be a kid and watch these things. And somebody said it before, Toriyama may be gone, but his legacy, his vision, his life force, the series is going to be something that whether you stopped watching Dragon Ball after Z, whether you kept watching Dragon Ball through Dragon Ball GT and Super and all those things, whether you watched only Dragon Ball, you gotta admit that Toriyama laid the footwork for these characters, this world, this magical experience. And to that I say, Chala head Chalad. Thank you so much, Toriyama. Sonic even took inspiration by turning Super Sonic. Like, yeah, absolutely. And I hate to cut this short because I feel like I haven't given it the complete justice that it deserves. But I wanted to say my piece while I'm still at my best of health so that I don't pass out or give you guys like a ramble of me slowly like getting dehydrated and not working at my fullest potential. But I wanted to just, I couldn't. I would even argue that I was laying in bed and I was like, my body felt chills all over. And I fought and I was like, no, you can't prolong this at all. You can't take a break from this. You have to do this tribute. You have to do this video. And I think, honestly, Toriyama gave me the strength to like push forward and get up and do this. I easily could have just postponed this to Monday, but I didn't want to. I felt like too much time would have passed, and I wanted to see it through to the end. Now, Monday, I definitely will try to upload this onto YouTube as obviously a tribute and an homage to the man, the myth, the legend, the god himself. But for now, from all the franchises, both video game, anime, hell, manga, visual novels, everybody combined, thank you, Toriyama. Thank you so much. Don't y'all find it funny that since Sonic Twitter account have saying anything about Toriyama's passing? Crazy how so much of Dragon Ball Z is about death and moving on. Right. So, again, can't solidify this enough. Thank you, Akira Toriyama. Through the ups, the downs, the inspiration, the controversy, the making of Goku, and this beautiful, beautiful cast that we've loved for so long. Thank you. And I'm going to turn Super Saiyan for you because, I mean, it's inspired so much. So, thank you so much, Akira Toriyama. I can't find any other way to end this, and I don't want it to drag on any longer than that. I want to staple it right here so you guys get a very solidified ending that can touch you all and maybe reach out to you all and maybe unlock core memories that you guys may have had. So, thank you so much. Goodbye. And again, I'm going to keep making content and keep creating because there's excellent people like Toriyama that have decided to help push me forward. Thank you.